Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the Metal Mill 52 workshop. My name is Bill. This is my shop, and we're working on an LBSC Tich locomotive. There's the book, and here's the actual project itself. Little 3.5-inch gauge live steam locomotive. We're getting down to the finishing touches now, and in this episode, I'll show you a couple of things that I was worried about that I've made some adjustments to, and a couple of little fun things. Like the fun thing was adding the little rails here. One of the subscribers, Julia from Julia's Shed, has suggested I go ahead and do the extra effort, so I'll show how I did that. Another major thing was some improvements on the ash pan, and the guy that I bought these parts from had commented about the difficulty of clearing out a clinker, or basically a rock, in the coal. You'd have to let the whole thing cool down and then turn the locomotive upside down and shake it out to get the clinker out. So the modification I made is it's not super easy, but it would be relatively easy to remove the entire ash pan and to hopefully clear out clinkers without having to shut the whole thing down. So we'll see. Hope you enjoy this episode. Please ask any questions. If you have no questions, just please give me a thumbs up. I always enjoy seeing that, and it does give me motivation to continue the project. So we're getting close, everybody, and I hope you enjoy as we wrap this thing up. For the ash pan, what I want to do is to create sort of a bracket that screws onto these things. These are the brake hangers. And when I built the ash pan, all I did was put a piece of wire. This is a piece of 1/16 inch thick brass wire that I bent into position to hold the ash pan up in place for when I put the removable pin. This is the pin that will pull out and let the ash pan dip down a little bit to make it a little easier to clean. But you know, if you pull this out, there's nothing to connect the ash pan whatsoever. Here, I'll show you in case it's not clear. So the pin pulls out and the ash pan is completely loose, and that will be convenient for cleaning, but then again, it would be hard to replace and get it exactly in the right position underneath the firebox of the locomotive. So what I'm talking about doing is creating a little shelf here that will bolt onto these, and that I can screw the front edge of the ash pan down, and so it's fastened permanently. If I do it properly, I might be able to have a little tilt to the shelf so that it would allow the ash pan to tilt down slightly when the pin is removed and make it easier to clean. If that all is not clear, here's kind of a little sketch. This part here, the simple bracket looking thing, is what I'm talking about making, probably out of maybe 1/16 inch thick steel, 1/2 inch wide, about 2 7/8, so there's a little clearance inside the frame rails. The frame rails are almost 3 inches wide, like 2 15/16. So anyway, on a larger hole here than I need for the bolts. So I'm going to fabricate at least, just go ahead and mock one up in cardboard, or just make one in steel and see how that works. Probably make the holes a little larger so that there's a little pivot action for the ash pan. And cut out a little strip of 1/16 inch thick steel, just ordinary steel. Had some plate laying around, so I marked off a 1/2 inch and roughly 4 inches wide. Marked off the bends here, and I just drilled an 1/8 inch hole on either side. So this will go in. I'll test fit it on the inside of those brake hanger bolts, and we'll see if this strap supports the ash pan well. There's a little strap in place. This is exactly the idea that I was shooting for, and it rotates nice and all that. So fits. It took me a little adjustment to get it to fit inside the frame rails just right, but this is ideal. The only problem is, let me flip the ash pan over and you'll see. Oops. Tricky to do all this with one hand. I was hoping to have the ash pan flat and level. It needs to be flat and level. So obviously I got my distances wrong with where I put the screw holes, but not a big deal. I can just take it out. What I'll do is elongate the screw holes make them oblong, and then this thing will be adjustable, and I can set it just at the right height. Test fitting the boiler in place. I've got the rod. I made an 1/8 inch steel rod. I threaded both ends of number 5 by 40 threads per inch to replace the little brake hanger pieces, and it's a 1/2 inch sticking out overall, so it looks odd, but I needed to do it this way so that I could use the nut to hold the rod in place. And I think this is going to be great because it supports the ash pan in exactly the right position. Here you can see the ash pan down here, and it's supported very well. So I just need to come up with a way of affixing the rod to the front of the ash pan. I'm thinking a couple of little clamp type things and screwing them in. So I'll bring you back for that. So here's the rod inside there, and that's the ash pan that is flipped over. You can see why I need something to hold it into place, because it's just too easy to move out of place. So my idea is take a piece of brass like 1 inch wide, really thin stuff, maybe 1/16 inch thick, and then double it up like this, wrap it around the rod, and then bend it, bring it around the front of the ash pan, and then just secure it with some screws. Here's a little bracket. I've formed it around a piece of 1/8 inch steel rod, same material that I made the rod out of, and this will about be the orientation that it'll be placed in. I left it extra long on purpose so that I could cut it off as need be. So now I'll take it off the forming. You can see pretty much how I put an angle in there, and then I just bent it around the rod and cleaned it up by hammering it in the vise. So I'll take it off and then test fit it on there with the ash pan, and when we come back then I can trim it to final size and put some screws in it to screw it to the ash pan. Hopefully this will show up in the mirror. I've got a little mirror that I keep in the workshop for purposes like this, and if you can see, there's the bottom of the ash pan, and then basically my initial idea of the brass clip didn't work very well, so I turned it into a clip that just goes over the bar that I put across in place of the brake hangers, and it seems to work pretty well. My main concern was having something that would keep the ash pan in place when I remove this pin to clean it out if I need to. So this will let the ash pan flop loose. Here, I'll demonstrate. Picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So I can pull this out, and you can see the pin. Oh, sorry, bad photo work there. But pull the pin out, and you can see that the ash pan is kind of loose, but I can pull it out almost all the way, and it will facilitate cleaning the cinders out from underneath there, and that's something I was worried about. And if I pull it out all the way, you can see the ash pan doesn't fall out, it just hangs loose. So it's still roughly in position. Sorry about the bad camera work, y'all. But so it's basically there, and it won't fall away. It's in the right place, so I could put it back, put the retaining pin back in and hold it in place. I'll take this apart and take the boiler off and show you what it looks like. I'm about to put another screw in it to hold it better. Here's the ash pan with the retaining pin removed, and you can see it's very loose, but at least it won't fall away. I won't have any danger of it getting, wickedly out of place, because I've got the front pin in place. If I pull the brake hanger out, which I'm not going to normally do, there's the ash pan, and here's the brass clip on it. As you can see, I've just got the one screw in it right now. And what it was the way I had bent it originally, it was way too tight, and it had pulled everything out of whack. So I figured just having a loose clip like this will do the job. So I'm going to put a couple more screws in here, and I think we'll be in good shape. Well, here's the finished little bracket. Probably one of the ugliest things I've made on the locomotive, but as long as it does the job, it's okay. I put a little stainless steel 080 button head screw in the base here, and then a second one in here. Not very symmetrical or pretty, but it'll hold it. So I'll put it back in position and let you see what it looks like. So here's the 1/8" steel rod that I put in place of the 2 individual brake hangers. It's just the ideal position for something like this to hold the ash pan in place. Okay, there we are, easy peasy with the boiler removed, but it's all sitting just like it needs to be, and it's pretty secure. There's still side to side movement, so this can get right underneath the opening in the firebox on the boiler. So yay, one more little thing done that I was worried about. Now that I got the ash pan thing sorted out, the one thing I wanted to check before I take everything apart and paint it was this line here, the water line that goes to the bypass valve. So I installed it here and I checked the fit over here. I also wanted to see the overall assembly procedure, and I wanted to see how it fit in relation to the clamp assembly that holds the boiler to the frame. There's one of these on either side, and it's hard to see with this, impossible to see with everything there, but the good news is the fit is good. Interesting thing, and note for future reference, when I go to put everything back together, I'm going to have to kind of have things loosely reassembled, because here's the whistle assembly, which I took off to make it easier to put this all back together, and you know, it doesn't fit. Simply put, there's that nut does not clear the hole there. So I'm either going to have to enlarge that hole, which I really don't want to do, or just kind of have the whistle already through loosely before I reconnect everything else. So I'm going to stop the video and I'll take the tank away and I'll show you the line routing. And here we go, the line with the tank removed. It's really tricky and a tight squeeze. I had to loosen this clamp so that I could lift the boiler gently up to make room for that angle fitting. I think that's what was in the way, but you can see how the line fits and goes across the top of this. So when I go to put everything back together, I'm going to have to kind of put things halfway in place and then, you know, ease the other thing, etc., etc. It's not going to be a 1, 2, 3 step process. A lot of little fitting and finagling, so to speak. Also wanted to add handrails, and I see, appreciate the comments from some viewers. Julia had recommended that handrails make a difference, so I found a supplier of garden scale little handrail stanchions here, because the size is important. It's called the Train Department from Rutherford, North Carolina. I just found them online, and I bought these little stanchions, and the bars I'm making out of 1/16 inch brass rod here. Here's one. So the process that I'm using anyway, I thought about different ways to do it, but I'm just drilled holes in place for the stanchions, and then I tightened them in place, and I test fitted the little brass rails. So then I cleaned the brass rail with acetone, and I'm using some green Loctite to put them firmly in place. I'll bring you back and show you what the finished product looks like. Here's a shot of the tanks with the handrails attached. If they're a little bit long, after this dries, I'll take them off and file that down a little bit just so that it doesn't stick up. This is a good looking view of this one here on the left hand tank. So real pleased with how that looks. I think it's going to be pretty cool. And here's the rear coal bunker, the handrails on that, and you can see that I forgot to mention they came with little brass nuts that are perfect fit. So very nice gear from that supplier. Also, it was very handy having these tiny wrenches from Blackgates Engineering. Really excited to be able to use those. They've come in handy in this project. So get those all done. What I'm doing now, I decided to put everything back together, all the body type things one more time, just to check the fits, and before I blow it apart for paint. And as a matter of fact, I spent about an hour making some adjustments on the steel boiler jacket here. I had some really thick brass rings, 40 thou brass rings underneath there, and it made the jacket fit not very well. They were resisting because they're thick and strong. They were pushing back on the jacket. So I made a 5 thou blanket, basically 5 thou brass blanket that's underneath there that should protect it. I also enlarged this hole a little bit so it wouldn't chafe against the little the spigot for the water sight gauge. So I'm going to put the tanks, put everything back together this evening, put the little I've got everything's apart in pieces. I'll put the little cab and all that stuff back and take one last look before I start getting ready for paint. I think I'm going to make this the last segment of this episode this week. I've got everything reassembled. I learned a couple lessons with the cab. I made some adjustments with some of the screws and all the holes just so it would fit better. I'll walk around while I talk. But you can see I've got all the body work in place and it's pretty much ready to be finished. So that'll involve some metal prep, cleaning, sanding, some self-etch primer for the brass parts, and I guess I'll use it on the steel as well. Masking off, so my plan is to paint this part of the chimney with a dull black paint, flat black, sort of a chimney paint. I'll show you in a second, high temperature, and paint the smoke box as well. And paint the steel boiler jacket a beautiful dark hunter green color, along with most of the rest of the body. I believe I'm going to go ahead with red on the top here as an accent. Need to touch up or repaint the running boards, and then inside the cab probably sort of an ivory color, just a light color to give a nice backdrop for things. So that's kind of my general game plan. I've got my paints laid out here. I've used this high heat Rust-Oleum. I used that on my boiler of my Allen Mogul. It's a flat black and it worked very well. It's adhered very, very nicely. This is the dark hunter green color. I'm real familiar with this. My old pickup truck I had painted in this dark hunter green. I really like it. I think it's going to look good. There's some Rust-Oleum self-etching primer that I have to use. Some gloss black for touching up the running boards, and the reds, sunrise red Rust-Oleum for the top. So nothing fancy. The choice of paints, I'll go into more of this detail later, but the main thing with the choice of paints is this is stuff that's easy to find. So if I need to touch it up in the future, I'll have that available. The other thing I need to do with is, of course, put all of the boiler accessories and fittings back on the boiler and then do a pressure test with it too, or a leak test. So that there's two main things, the painting and then the boiler assembly with the accessories and leak test. So I'll cover those. I'll probably do separate videos on both of those things in the future. Thanks for watching. Please ask any questions. I would love to hear any comments before I get completed. If you have some thoughts or comments about the ash pan and what I did in this episode, please tell me, if you think it's a good idea or a bad idea, or I need to rethink. Let me know now. I'd much rather make adjustments before I get too far down the road. But thanks everybody. I appreciate y'all being part of the journey, and I look forward to hearing from you.